I'm Jonathan Agnew, sitting at Edgbaston, overlooking the playing area where the West Indies are warming up ahead of the third and final Test match in this series. They've been hammered, of course, in the first two matches. They just really were blown away in that one session in Trent Bridge. They'll be hoping for better, and I think probably everyone here will be hoping for better as well over the next 5 days. The forecast is good. Can they make that Test match last the distance or not? Well, to discuss that and other things, Stefan Shemmelt is here, the chief cricket writer, BBC Sport, of course, and Will Macpherson, the cricket news correspondent of the Daily Telegraph. So, news-wise, West Indies, well, they've named 12. They're not quite sure what they're going to come up with tomorrow because Shamar Joseph, who always seems to have something wrong with him, is ill this time. And, of course, Kevin Sinclair got that horrible blow on the arm. It looked bad at the time from Mark Wood. That's been confirmed as broken. So he is out. England, they might have made a change or two. They might have brought in Potts or Pennington to rotate it. This sort of beauty contest that's going on, if you can describe it as that, to replace Jimmy Anderson. But they're unchanged. So Atkinson, who's taken, 16 wickets so far in this series, Mark Wood and co, will turn out again. So that's where we start things. Let's begin, Will, with England, shall we? Were you expecting an unchanged team, or did you think they might? I used to. It's not a great phrase, a beauty contest. We're talking about those individuals, but you know what
they're
I mean.
Big strapping lads, aren't they? So no, I am a bit surprised actually. I think I've probably left Trent Bridge on Sunday night thinking that Dylan Pennington might get a debut here, but then I think I also left Lords thinking he might get a debut at Trent Bridge. So England do have a habit of doing this, making their players wait. You remember in 2022 when Harry Brook was in that extraordinary run of form for Yorkshire, and everyone said he's got to play, got to get him a Test side, and they just resisted, and then eventually his chance came, and the wait kind of paid off in a way. In Pakistan, he was sensational. They did Gus Atkinson carry the drinks in India, and then by the time his chance came at Lords, he was ready to go. So I'm not entirely surprised. I'm slightly disappointed, just from our job's point of view. It's always nice to see new players, and it's fun.
There's not much else to write about it, they've done.
A little bit. You've obviously, the kind of the confusing thing is that England have retired James Anderson to have a look at new players, and then Mark Wood is 34, Chris Woakes is 35. We do know quite a lot about them. I also can sympathise with it in that I thought Woakes bowled beautifully last week. Mark Wood bowled as quickly as any England bowler I can remember. I think it's quickest on record, isn't it? But so I can understand why they've stuck with them. I would have been tempted just to make, I possibly would have rested Atkinson actually, just to give Pennington probably, but maybe Potts as well a go. It's slightly disappointing, I think.
There's the old player in me, though, you see. I would really hate it if I were Gus Atkinson taking 16 wickets. Yeah. It's a Test cap. It's a chance to take wickets. I'd be furious if I were dropped to give someone a go. I think that integrity is quite important.
Definitely sympathise with that.
Yeah. As soon as the England team broke earlier on today, I was getting messages from people saying, "Why have they pensioned off Jimmy Anderson and then not given bowlers a chance?" So it does seem a bit counterintuitive from England's point of view to have done that with Anderson and then not use this opportunity when they're 2-0 up. But if we go right back to the start of this regime, if you will, with Stokes and McCullum, when you spoke to McCullum at Lords, Aggers, the first thing he said was he always wanted to play his best team at every single opportunity. So they have moved away from this rotating their fast bowlers unless they absolutely have to. And the second thing is, if you pay attention to England's selection really closely over the past 2 years, they're very hierarchical in how they do things. They do seem to have an order. And so when they needed a fast bowler at the start of this summer, we knew Gus Atkinson was the next cab off the rank because he'd carry the drinks around India. As soon as Mark Wood was back in the squad last week and fit to play, he goes straight back in because England want to play him at every possible opportunity. I think they see Mark Wood actually right now as their number one first choice fast bowler. And the other thing, a number of years ago, Aggers, can you remember the Test match here against the West Indies when England rested pretty much their entire fast bowling attack? It was Tino Best's Test match, wasn't he? When he got, was he 98? 95 he got. And that... we sort of said at the time, it doesn't feel right that they've done that. It didn't actually play out all that well.
Well, I was quite angry about it and got called into Andy Flower's office for a telling off. I said, I'm really sorry, but I said what I believe about selection. They're Test caps, and injury and form and fitness and tiredness is all part of playing international sport, but not just resting people for the sake of it.
And also, England have been accused this summer of kind of not playing their best team. Saying don't disrespect the West Indies and all that kind of stuff. And now they are picking what they deem to be their best team. I also don't. People are a bit upset about Wokes getting. He's played all 3 games of this series after Jimmy's been retired, and it's almost as if they've been bracketed together. And as much as there's so much emotion around Jimmy's enforced retirement, and it is a bit sad. I am sad that I'm never going to watch him bowl for England again. But Wokes is 6 years younger than him. They're not in the same age bracket. They are a long way apart in age. Last summer, Wokes was man of the series in the Ashes, having only come in midway through. Took his wickets at about 19, I think. Jimmy took his wickets at 85 last summer. Wokes has earned this spot in this team, I think. And by after he's obviously had a tough start to the summer.
He needed that bowl.
He needed a bowl,
day,
exactly. But at Trent Bridge, he looked up to back to maybe not quite the level of last summer, but getting there. And I'm glad that Wokes has been given this. I think the space in England's attack, as much as they might be looking towards the Ashes, I think there is space for one kind of home specialist over the next 2 summers. Next summer's really important against India.
Yeah.
Wokes will be 36 then, so maybe coming in conventional terms, he's coming towards the end, we would say, as a fast bowler. But Jimmy and Broady have obviously redefined what we think about that. But I think there is space for one guy to lead the attack at home.
Yeah, a Mr. Reliable type. Exactly. In conditions that might just suit a bit, he's going to bowl there or thereabouts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wokes and Anderson do really different jobs in the team as well. And I can see why people have equated Wokes and Anderson. Particularly when Wokes got left out of the Tour of India because of his away record, and England have been so naked about their planning for the Ashes in 18 months' time. And you say, well, if Wokes doesn't go to India and he hasn't got a very good record away, why is he still in the team now? England need a number 8, and there's no obvious other candidate to do that. Now Broad has gone. England might, if England were going to change a spinner, they might have had Tom Hartley, they might have had Rayan Ahmed, who were other candidates. They haven't gone that way. Bashir is a genuine number 10 or 11, and that's a really important role for Chris Wokes to play in this team. I was talking to some other journalists over a curry in Nottingham last week, and I said I could actually see a way that Wokes does get to Australia. I could see a path for him there. I could see a role in a squad of 5 or 6 fast bowlers that Wokes would do that job. Day-night game. Someone's going to have to bowl some donkey overs if Jofra Archer and Mark Wood are in the same team.
Fremantle doctor.
So someone's going to have to bowl. Someone's going to have to bat at number 8. I could see Wokes doing that job. I'm not saying that he will. I'm not necessarily saying it's a good idea. But you can. It's not absolutely out of the question that Wokes isn't needed to perform that role.
I was talking to Ben Stokes about the team being unchanged, and let's hear what he had to say to me earlier today.
When you look at how we performed over the first 2 games, it's pretty hard to look past any changes. I think we've been, 2 very, very impressive all-round team performances. We're looking to cap off this series with another win.
I hesitate to use the word beauty contest with those involved, but there's kind of a feeling that those up-and-coming fast bowlers might all get a bit of a go. Just have to wait, I suppose.
Yeah, it is, and I think as well, having Matty Potts and Dylan Pennington around the group, although they've not got an opportunity, I think it's been great for them to be into the squad and sort of just get the vibe around, because it has been a long time for Matthew, who's been out the squad, and obviously Dylan's first time. So it's great for them, but obviously no doubt there will be an opportunity in the summer, because fast bowling's hard. We've got another. We've got a break, but no doubt 100 will be played, and then another 3 Test matches. So it will be highly unlikely that all of the fast bowlers will be able to sort of back up games. But in a perfect world, that would be great as well if they could. Yeah,
it's also, someone like Atkinson, for instance, it would perhaps feel a bit wrong to give him a rest. He's going, he's flying, he's taking wickets, and you need to have integrity with selection from that point of view.
Yeah, look, Gus has been phenomenal, I think, when he as he's came into the team. Obviously, his Lord's debut was just sensational, and last week again as well. He's always looked threatening with every spell that he's bowled, and he's he showed why we think so highly of him. Obviously, Woody coming back in last week just added that X factor into the team, and it's great having 2 guys who you can turn to try and blow the game open when you feel like the time is right to do that. Having 2 guys who can bowl as quickly as those 2 is great.
I imagine Mark Wood's dining out on that 97 mile an hour loosener, isn't he? How does he do that? That must be a speed gun job, isn't it?
No, it is 97 mile an hour. When the speed comes up on the side, it's it's quick. Even when he comes back, after in second and third spells in the day, you got to hold your hands up and just sort of, celebrate what we have there. He's got the heart of a lion. He runs in spell after spell, ball after ball. And although he didn't get the rewards that he wanted last week, he knows that he affects the game in more ways than just wickets. And that showed last week. But as I said at the end of last game, I think someone will pay this summer, whether that's West Indies this game or Sri Lanka later on in the summer.
Yeah. And does it feel electric when he comes on? I mean, out there in the field.
Yeah, it does. The whole game just sort of changes. The crowd, when Mark Wood gets read out on the tannoy, you see the crowd start going up, and then when the speed starts coming up on the big screen, everyone gets going. Woody's always looking up at the big screen as well to see what's clocking. But I think as well that's part of his place in the team as well, is because he knows that he's in the team to not only bowl skillfully but also fast, and that's why obviously Dylan and Potsy will no doubt get an opportunity, because if Woody's not feeling 100%, it's sort of, is there any point in playing him because of why he's in the team, if that makes sense? So look, what he does is very tough on the body as well.
You can only beat what you're up against, and you've handed out 2 pretty serious thrashings so far. What do you think you've really taken out of these 2 Test matches?
Well, I think although it looks 2-0 and pretty comprehensive wins, I think we've at times been put under pressure as a batting unit and as a bowling unit. And one thing I've been very happy with is how we've handled those, how we've identified those moments. I think Joe and Brookie on the evening of day 3, that partnership was high class in very, very tough batting conditions. The lights were on, it was dark, and obviously they got the ball change, was starting to do a little bit. So you look at the end of the day, we could easily have been 6-7 down there if we didn't sort of adapt to that sort of hour and a half, 2 hour session. Again, with the ball 70 for none on day 4, to then bounce back and take our 10 wickets for I think another 70 runs. It's shown that we have been put under pressure, but the response that we've given back to West Indies in those critical moments in the Test match, I think, has been high class.
You seem in a good place at the moment. I mean, 2 years in for your captaincy. How do you think that's evolved in those 2 years?
Really good. Obviously, from a personal point of view, it's great to be back contributing and bowling as well. But just in general, just even in the field, everything feels really, really good.
Yeah.
Captaincy wise, still encouraging everyone to go out there and as I say, entertain people. But I think we've had a huge progression, not only as a team but as individuals. Everyone works incredibly hard at their game, day in, day out, and it's one thing I keep saying, when we do train, make sure we're always trying to get better and never be happy with where you're at.
So that's Ben Stokes, who's in good form actually. He's walking around with a huge smile on his face. It's been transformed having had this knee sorted out. I mean, you think how he used to hold our breath when we watched him run to the boundary after the ball last year. He's just completely different. He's a bit stiff in the morning sometimes. So there you go. So that was interesting. Shoaib Bashir then. I mean, what a performance that was. Are we surprised? I don't know. He does seem a very quick learner. I know Phil Tufnell was watching him, and the line that he was bowling, he said he's struck as being a very inexperienced, sort of almost like a second team bowler to start with, because it was so straight, and it was just very easy to flick away. But actually, come that second innings, they've already been talking to him. That 4th stump line opens up all those possibilities. I mean, he's a rare talent, isn't he? He's tall as well, and really extraordinary.
He's so tall.
Yeah,
he's so lanky. Yeah, it's an extraordinary story, really. That I think someone said the other day that the last time England had won a Test series, Bashir had literally just signed his first terms with Somerset as a professional. He hadn't played a professional game or anything like that. And last summer, Stokes saw that video on Twitter of him bowling Sir Alistair Cook and thought, I want to have a look at this guy. They took him on the Lions tour. He bowled very nicely there. They had a lot of young bowlers on that Lions tour, and he was kind of the pick of them. And then he ends up in India. And I think I remember in India when we'd made it into the country and Shoaib Bashir hadn't, because he had that visa issue. I think I probably at that stage was just not thinking he was a realistic candidate to play much of a part in the series. But there he was by the second Test. He was straight into the side. Admittedly, Leach had picked up an injury, but he just looked, his first over in India, I just felt like this guy can bowl.
Out.
Yeah,
easily, wasn't he?
Immediately thought, Hartley was bowling quite nicely, but it's sort of darts and it's a bit flatter and a bit more maybe specifically for that tour. And Rayan Ahmed's a little bit all over the place, very fun cricketer, but not terribly refined. Now, Bashir isn't refined at all, but he there's clearly so much to work with, and you can see him improving all the time. He's being very closely coached by Jeetan Patel. I mean, people have joked over the years about why England have a spin bowling coach when quite often they haven't picked spinners in recent years, but now it's kind of paying off. You even see Jeetan Patel down on the boundary at fine leg and chatting to Bashir between overs, and he is getting better. I mean, those 2 wickets he got in the first innings at Trent Bridge, well, he was probably bought then by Mark Wood, by his fearsome stuff at the other end, but the wickets in the second innings, most of them were proper off-spinners wickets. In the fourth innings, when the pressure's on him, and I thought he bowled beautifully.
Going back to the start of that India tour, when we were on the boundary edge in Hyderabad before the first test, and we got told, Shoaib Bashir's not in the country, and we sort of shrugged our shoulders and went, well, he wasn't going to play anyway. And I think actually it made more ripples back here as a story, as more of like a wider news story than it did from a cricketing point of view. We'd even been told.
Well, the Prime Minister was involved.
Absolutely. Yeah. But we'd sort of been told when the squad was picked, he was kind of going for experience, and he played ultimately because Leach did get injured. Then he really impressed. What's fascinating about what England are trying to do with Bashir is they've identified the attributes that he's got, and sometimes we say, oh, he's tall and he's got a high release point, as that's the only thing. It's not. He's obviously very skillful, but they're sort of hothousing a spin bowler in Test cricket. They're getting him to learn on the job with some of the coaching that Will mentioned with Jeetan Patel. The thing that they've really identified, I think, or thing that I like about him looking ahead to the Ashes, is that temperament. Because if you think of maybe the way that Jack Leach suffered on the last tour, that plenty of England spinners have actually suffered with in Australia, you know that Australia are going to look to eat him for breakfast. They are coming for him. Yep. This is a bowler that was hit for 38 in an over by Dan Lawrence earlier in the season. Ben Stokes was saying to us after the match at Trent Bridge, he gets hit for 6, he just turns around, kind of got a bit of a smile on his face. He's completely unflappable, and he is going to need every little bit of that unflappability if and when he makes it to Australia.
Yeah, I mean, even the fact that when he got hit for those 6s, he was out on loan from Somerset. Just he was prepared to go and do that to get some cricket. I think that unflappability was even seen during the visa problem in India. He just took it in his stride. He's a 20-year-old lad being sent back to London from Abu Dhabi because he couldn't get into India. I actually think I'd have been pretty flustered by that situation, but he turned up and he played in the next Test match. He seemed absolutely fine. So there's clearly a character there that they like. They do select on attributes, and they're not too worried about how much someone's playing for their county. You know, they've picked Somerset.
Well, that's the point. So he needs to play.
Yeah,
he needs to play first-class cricket. So is there going to be some sort of breaking point? And I use the same thing with Jamie Smith as well. I mean, if he's going to keep wicket in Pakistan, he's going to have to do some wicket-keeping, isn't he? Red ball cricket, surely.
Yes. But if these guys are going to be mainstays in the England Test team, how many opportunities are they going to have?
Well, not many. But when they're available,
absolutely.
Have they got to play?
But I think that's probably only a problem that's going to come about maybe at the start of next season. Yeah. If you look to the rest of this season, after this Test match, we're going into the 100. By the time the county championship comes around again, we're into the Sri Lanka series. There's only a few weeks after the Sri Lanka series finishes before guys go to Pakistan, so they'll be rested. You're absolutely right, and you wonder how this is going to play out. And Somerset have already had that situation in the past when Don Best was playing for England, but Jack Leach was already at Somerset. In fact, it always happens at Somerset.
The keepers,
The keepers always. Josh Butler moved from Somerset. It always seems to happen there. They must produce very good cricketers.
You mentioned Tuffers before. You know, he probably he probably would say I didn't get to my peak as a spinner until he was in his 30s. He took 1,000 first-class wickets or whatever he took. England have got a 20-year-old who is, you know, they're asking him to learn on the job in Test cricket. It's an extraordinary situation. Maybe it's just the way of the modern world, but it is strange.
Let's mention the Windies before we go. What can they do? I mean, it is sad, and I don't mean that in a condescending way, but you know, they did show they showed what they've got at Trent Bridge, and then they also showed what they haven't got. You know, all those frailties exposed again. You just felt once they're a couple down, they could get blown away tonight, and you sort of wonder if they feel that as well themselves, if confidence is so shot.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, Lords was was tough viewing, wasn't it? They were completely undercooked. And then at Trent Bridge for 3.5 days, they did compete really well. For 3 days, really, England were 200-ish ahead going into the fourth day, and then just turned the screw on the fourth day. You know, they had Cavum Hodge get 100, other guys getting runs. They looked like they were growing into the series. You would hope that they will continue that improvement. You're right. That was the first test for England ever scored 400 in both innings, I think, and it was one of the very few that the first 3 innings of a match were all above 400, and then that pressure just told, didn't it? England were the better team, and then they just it all fell apart for the Windies on the final day. I mean, Craig Brathwaite today in his press conference was talking about the fact that they have 5 more test matches this year, and for them that seems quite a lot. England have actually got what is it? They've got 3 more 3-match series. They've got 9 more, and we don't even think about that being. We think it's quite a lot, but it's just normal. So they just don't have the volume of test matches, so they almost will be thinking in this game about building into those ones and keeping on improving. You know, I think it's clear from that first innings at Trent Bridge that there is some talent in that batting lineup. Hodge was brilliant. Afanaz was batted really nice. He's a really stylish player. Kirk Mackenzie's clearly kept his place. He's the one who you'd say has really struggled at number 3, but there is something there. They just haven't had the opportunity, and so that, again, it's a bit like Bashir in a very different way, but they are learning the job. The trouble is, 4 of the top 5 are all learning on the job at the same time.
What you would say is you'd hope for the same amount of improvement between Nottingham and Birmingham as there was between Lords and Nottingham. And if the West Indies can pull that off, then we should be in for a really, really good week. And after 3 days at Trent Bridge, we all left going, this has been a fantastic test match. We were kind of fearful for the spectacle of the series after what happened at Lords. They were pretty specific circumstances, I think, with James Anderson's test matrimonial. And then on that pitch at Trent Bridge, the West Indies did compete much harder for much longer. What I would say about the West Indies, though, let's not forget what they've already done this year, which is shocking Australia at the Gabba. They've got form for pulling off shock results in this country. Let's not forget what happened at Headingley. And so to bring our conversation full circle, it is exactly right that England have, therefore, kept their team as strong as they possibly could, to not take the West Indies lightly, that they were sort of being accused of at the start of the summer when they said, we're planning for the Ashes, and for England to want to go and win that game, or to win this test match, and to win the series 3-0, because for as much as you point it out to Ben Stokes, and he gets a bit cross about when we say, you hadn't won a series since the end of 2022, well, they hadn't, and now they have, and now they can win a series 3-0, and they might not get to the World Test Championship final, but they were bottom of that table before this series began, and they can climb that. And so it is right.
5th, I think, if they win tomorrow, something like that.
Something like that. And I think they could end up in the top 3 by the end of the summer. Very unlikely that they're going to get into the top 2 ahead of Australia and India. But these are all things that keep the integrity of Test cricket high. These are things that we want England to do, to be at their best, to take everything seriously, whilst at the same time we want the West Indies to show the same improvement, and for this week to be every bit as good as last week was, certainly for those first 3 days.
Yeah, last thought, we must mention the 100, which is starting up. For me, the old traditionalist, your ramps and your sixes, but there's nothing more compelling than watching 97-mile-an-hour fast bowling for me. I mean, this is a chance again for Test cricket to remind everybody that for these new tournaments, actually the object of these new tournaments, we're told, don't necessarily believe it, we're told, is to protect and preserve this. And we had a glimpse really of what that sort of compelling fast bowling viewing is like last week.
Absolutely, the 100 is designed as, I think it's got 2 purposes for the people who run the game. One is as a gateway drug to get new fans into the game, young kids. And I was at the Oval the other night, and afternoon as well, and there were lots of young kids having a great time at the Oval, and that was very pleasing to see. It's also there to make money and prop up everything else, whether domestically or globally. But yeah, there is nothing like a Test match. We've even in a game which England won by hundreds of runs the other day, as you say, there were moments where it was, just nothing else in sport like it. And there's Olympics coming up, and I'd still rather be here. So
it's actually a brilliant week, a brilliant time for cricket overall. So you've got this Test match here. Ireland are playing Zimbabwe in a Test match, which started today. The 100, if that's your thing, and also the One Day Cup has just started as well. And there's some great stories in that tournament this year. Keep an eye out for Rocky Flintoff. Keep an eye out for Archie Vaughan. Those guys making their senior county debuts.
My makes you feel very old.
My hope is that it's not just that these things become divisive, that it has to be Test cricket or the 100 or whatever for cricket fans just to see that these things can rub along together and we can all enjoy the great game and enjoy all the different things that are going on at this part of the year.
So let's get the thoughts of some of the Test match special commentators who are working with us here at Edgbaston over the next few days. Henry Moran has been speaking to Carlos Brathwaite and Stephen Finn.
Stephen, first of all, I'm not quite sure what to expect. It was such a dominant display from England in the first game, and then West Indies fought back before it all fell away again in the second.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed watching those first 3.5 days of the second Test match, and it can happen like that when you lose those 3 quick wickets after you'd set a platform. It can fall away quickly in that last innings. So I don't think you can read too much into that, but certainly the West Indies look better for having had the run out at Lords, which seems extraordinary to talk about an actual Test match like that. I suppose slightly surprisingly for me, England have decided to play an unchanged team in this third Test when, with the retirement of James Anderson and the wanting to blood players to make sure that they're ready for that Ashes series in 18 months' time. I thought they may have seen this as an opportunity to get a Test match into someone like Pennington or another one into Matthew Potts, who hasn't played since well over a year in Test match cricket now, isn't it? So yeah, there's going to be some interesting caveats to this game, but I hope that the West Indies turn up battle hardened after those first 2 tests, ready to put on a show, because we know that they're capable from what we saw in that second Test.
Come on then, Carlos, what's been the word inside the West Indies camp after that second Test match? Because it was much better.
I guess I wouldn't say it was the word, because I haven't done like a proper post-mortem with any of the boys, but from my personal standpoint, I think they just run out of gas. You see how hard they fought over the first 3.5 days, and I just think a lack of skill, not necessarily a lack of will, was the undoing of them. And I think that is why we love Test cricket, because it's not only the ability to perform for a short period of time, but it's against the best in the most trying conditions and for a prolonged period of time, and you can lose a match in a session. And they would think that they lost the first Test essentially in the first session, for sure the first day, and they'll look back to the last Test and think they lost it in that final session on the 4th day. So how can they continue to show the skill, the graft, the will that they showed in the first 3 days, but try to get that till the end of the 4th day into the 5th day? And I'm one of the old school believers that you have to learn to draw Test matches before you can win them. And if you think back to A.B. de Villiers and Hashim Amla, they were able to put aside all their attacking intent in one of the tests, and I think A.B. got 27 off 200 or something balls, I speak under correction. But it's that ability to withstand pressure, absorb momentum, and take a Test match 5 days culminating in a draw, and then you be able to do that consistently. You know when to shift gears and change that draw into a win. I still don't think the West Indies are good enough consistently to be able to get draws against the best teams, especially away from home. But they've shown a lot of improvement from Lords. They've shown that the performance at the Gabba was not a fluke and that they have something in them. I think the challenge for them now is to do it more consistently.
The prospect of a draw in a Test match?
Not one that involves England, I don't think. It's fast forward cricket between Test matches. We've had the usual hyperbole from England about how they might score 500 or 600 in a day. I think it was from Ollie Pope, the vice-captain, wasn't it? But, seeing both teams pushing back against each other is something that you want to see in Test matches. The pitches at Edgbaston, a few of the tests that I've played there, especially with the weather conditions that we've had in the last few weeks, there tends to be a bit of bounce, a bit of nibble on that first morning especially. So if we do get that, expect the West Indies seamers to cause some problems for that England top order. And then I think that sort of start to the game will make it a fascinating Test match.
West Indies, we will see changes. We know that Gurish Modi is going to be fit again. Possibly Shamar Joseph missing out with flu, Hakeem Jordan on standby to take his place. What are we expecting from this West Indies lineup? I mean, he's a big boost to have back.
Yeah, Moti's quality bat, ball in the field. I think also as a competitor, And I remember Rodman Powell, T20 skipper, albeit different format. We talked so much about matchups, and he was saying that he doesn't mind bowling Motie to the left-hander, which is a good matchup, even letting the left-hander hit into the wind. Motie's so clever. So I think in tricky conditions, when you need your best lineups, Motie's definitely the best spinner in the Caribbean, and they'll be happy to have his services again. Shamar Joseph, I think he came into the series a little bit undercooked, and in hindsight, obviously hindsight being 2020, I think there'll be a few questions asked if it would have been better served for him to come play county cricket. Hakeem Jordan is a curious case because he was on that trip to Australia. He lost his play in the Barbados team during first class, would have made some technical amendments, someone that I speak to quite often, plays at my local club in Barbados as well. And he felt as though he really found himself coming onto the back end of the first class season. Then once Kemar Roach pulled out, I think most persons in the Caribbean thought if you had this guy on tour in Australia already, then he'll be the next one in. But from Hakeem Jordan, what you can expect, not the quickest, but swings the ball both ways, impeccable control. So he would form a different challenge, I think. Jason Holder and him will probably be those two workhorse type bowlers, and allowing Alzari to come in and have a bigger impact. Jayden Seales has been good with the older ball. They'll need a lot more from him with the new ball. But if they do have Hakeem Jordan, then that's a straight swap with the new ball. Give Hakeem the new ball, allow him to pair with Alzari Joseph, and then Jayden Seales and Jason Holder follows up with Motie coming behind him. And I think that's a formidable enough attack that can continue to take wickets, which is one thing the coach mentioned. They want to be taking 10 wickets in 90 overs, and they did that in the first innings. Can they replicate it with a better catching and fielding performance?
Forget 10 wickets in 90 overs. England got 19 wickets against West Indies in a single day in the day-night test of 2017. Finney, what's this surface likely to offer? You've had great success there.
Yeah, I think it very much depends how much grass the groundsman decides to leave on there. I think if it is a grassy pitch, then you can expect it to carry, you can expect it to nibble around and bounce. An Ashes test in 2015 was almost the perfect fast bowling wicket, and expect lots of wickets to fall if we get something like that with the amount that it's rained and how lush these grounds are at the moment. Then I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, but if somehow it is a dry surface, it can offer the spinners a little bit of something. And I remember reverse swinging there a little bit as well over the years. A game against Pakistan in 2016, it reverse swung big in a test match there. So yeah, it's a very versatile wicket. Expect the Holly stand to be in full voice. That's a magnificent thing to experience as an England player, and that I'd imagine that this game will be relatively fast paced whichever way it goes.